All right, Sean in Pennsylvania, you get to be the last call for Jenna's first show.
Hi.
Oh my God. I'm excited to be chatting with you both.
Awesome.
And Jenna, you told a lot, and I really understand, and that's really cool of you to share that with us. And Matt, I've seen a lot of what you've shared, and I have a lot of respect for everything that you do.
Thank you.
I have come with a question, and it's a difficult one, and it's a problematic one. How do we have hope? Or how do we have hope without faith?
Oh. Well, okay.
I have a friend who wrote a book with that title, or kind of
Really?
that title. Hope After Faith was Jerry DeWitt's book.
How do you define hope and faith?
Excuse me. For hope, I would go with specifically wishing good for the future, like, or even our expectation for a better future. And for faith, I would say that there's some sort of trust and belief that comes with that.
Okay.
Oh, so that definition of faith.
Faith and hope. Oh, I see. You're saying that they're the same thing, right?
Well, so by faith, you're just how can we have hope without faith? So my definition of faith makes it useless for hope or anything else.
Right.
But what you seem to be talking about is we have to trust and have confidence. But
Have faith
trust
in
and
something, right?
yeah, but confidence can be rationally justified. Faith is irrationally justified confidence, or a confidence that's disproportionate to the evidence. But we can set the word aside. How can we have hope? Well, for a lot of people, it's unavoidable. Hey, I hope this happens. I hope that happens. I'm optimistic about this. For some people, I'm not sure they can ever really have hope. The sort of pessimistic mindset of everything's awful and cynical. So it seems to me that the best way to foster hope is to teach people that both the overly exuberant optimism that flies in the face of evidence and the overly exuberant pessimism that flies in the face of evidence are both extremes that aren't warranted. And an actual honest assessment of the evidence will tailor your expectation of hope to that which is truly reasonable. So saying, I hope I win the lottery is, okay, we can calculate what the odds of winning the lottery are, and you can realize that that's, probably not a likely place to place your hope. But when I say, I hope Jenna and I have a good first show for her, that wasn't just, I'm exercising faith. It's I'd already seen Jenna on the show. I knew a little bit. I know how the show goes. I have a mountain of evidence that leads up to saying, I'm incredibly optimistic that we will have a good show. That is hope that is warranted by evidence. It could turn out to not be true. The world is uncertain. But if you teach people skepticism, if you teach people how to evaluate the evidence, I think hope thrives in that. And the hope that thrives in that is reasonable hope and not pie-in-the-sky hope.
Well said.
But how many arguments have you had the exact same way, where you're not even... Don't you sometimes feel like you can have the arguments over and over and over again, and no one's hearing and no one's understanding, or people are choosing and...
No, because I have thousands upon thousands of emails from people who've changed their mind because of what the show's done. Every single convention I go to, there are numerous people who come up to thank me for what this show has done, for not just for what I've done, but for what the ACA's done, for what every host and co-host on here has done, for what the other programs have done, because they do change minds.
I think everything that you're doing is great, and I'm really happy to.
I'm not knocking you on this. I'm just saying you suggested that maybe I was sitting here frustrated by the futility of arguing with people who don't change their mind. There are people who don't change their mind, and there are people who do. Some of them call, some of them watch.
Okay, so going back to how can we have hope? We can know empirically that bad things are going to happen, no matter how good of a person you are.
Yeah. And we can know that good things are going to happen, no matter how good or bad you are.
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose so, but the point that I'm making is in this world where you can actually lie out every statistical probability and realize in this universe how statistically insignificant we are. I mean, like our lives are tiny on a biological scale, let alone a geological scale, let alone a astronomical scale.
What does the scale have to do with anything? The fact, so an ant could potentially have hope, even though it's, potentially less. None of this makes any difference to whether or not you can reasonably have hope. All you need to reasonably have hope is evidence that there's a possible or likely good outcome.
So then then there comes in the moral question of what is a good outcome? What is like
that? Actually, Sean, it's irrelevant. Do you agree that both good and bad things happen? You've already said that bad things happen. Do you think only bad things happen?
Do I think only bad? No, I don't think only bad things happen. I don't think that it's hard to, is anything that is a fact good or bad?
Well, that is a complete diversion from what we're talking about. Do you think that good things happen?
I don't know. I believe things.
I don't understand why this is any harder than asking, do you think bad things happen? You are happy instantly to say that bad things happen, and when I ask you if good things happen, you hem and haw.
Yeah.
Why don't you think? You're asking me a subjective question about an objective.
No.
He just asked, do you think good things happen?
That's it. I think good. I don't know whether or not. I think that I have had a good life. I think that my life has been.
This isn't
so you're
about
saying
yours.
You don't know if you're saying you don't know if those things are good. Is that what you're saying?
I think that I have. It's hard because good and bad is a moral judgment.
No, it's not. Not. I'm not talking about morality at all. We can look at it entirely from your subjective, personal opinion about whether or not a consequence is good or bad. In your personal, subjective opinion, do both good and bad things happen?
Do both? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a subjective opinion.
I said in your personal, subjective fucking opinion.
So you're asking me subjectively.
Yeah. Do you, Sean, personally think, in your opinion, that good things happen and that bad things happen?
I do, Matt Dillahunty,
yes.
My personal opinion. But that's not subjective, is it?
It doesn't have to be. Here's the thing. You're now, okay, we've gotten to the point. I happen to agree with you that in my personal subjective opinion, good things happen and bad things happen. Whether or not this thing that I thought was good ultimately turns out to be bad or might be bad for somebody else, or if we go down the rabbit hole of all the potential butterfly effect things or anything else, the truth is I'm convinced that there are good things that happen and bad things that happen. There are bad things that have happened to me in the last couple of weeks. Some things are bad in some ways and potentially good in other ways, but I would say that a good thing that happened is that we found Jenna to come on and co-host the show. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that in my personal subjective opinion, that's a good thing. It might turn out to be a terrible thing. Hang on, Sean. Hang on.
I'm sorry.
It might turn out to be a bad thing. I might change my mind on it, but I have the ability to look at this and say, holy crap. Hey, if
you have the ability to
I'm going to make this real easy, Sean. I'm going to leave this building in a little while and hop in my truck and drive home. Now, making it home safely without any damage to myself or my truck, I'm going to call it a good thing. Getting in an accident on the way home, I'm going to call it a bad thing. Would you agree? Would you agree kind of that would be good thing and bad thing?
Yes, I can subjectively agree.
Would you also agree that there are objective facts about reality that determine the likelihood of both me getting home and me getting in an accident?
Yes, and I think that those objective truths make life a little harder.
Well, that's not the point.
Harder to have hope.
Who says life isn't supposed to?
It goes back
oh my
to
God!
My original point. How do we have hope?
I'm getting to that. If you'd stop talking about how life is hard. Well, we've gotten to a point that I'm either going to get home safely, which we would agree was a good thing, or I'm going to get in an accident and potentially die or get hurt, which is a bad thing. And that the truth about which of those happens is based on objective facts about reality. The maintenance of my vehicle, the other drivers on the road, all of these things. And so I can assess the data to determine a likelihood for getting home safely or a likelihood for getting in a wreck. And because I don't know what the outcome is, I can have hope, and my hope can be based on the objective evidence, the hope for that goal. Doesn't matter how hard life is, doesn't matter what your subjective opinion about good or bad are. Once you've decided this is good, and we can make some assessment about it, I can hope that I get home safely. And I can hope that you get home safely. And I can hope that other people get home safely. And they can hope the same thing for me.
For the record, I am a person, any one of my friends will tell you, when I part ways with anyone, I say, drive safely, get home safely, and I understand, that being on the road, there's more probabilities of accidents. I bicycled across Pennsylvania last August. I bicycled down to Florida this winter, I cheated and took some trains because winter weather is not something you want to bicycle through.
So for hope.
So you weren't particularly hopeful about the weather.
No, I mean, so yeah, I had backup plans, and I do, I hope that my life is going to be okay, but I don't know, is that not based on faith?
Hope isn't knowledge, and hope can be based on reason. That's it.
Well, I mean, yeah. Especially when you say it, especially with respect to you, it sounds right, but I'm
going to let Jenna say it.
or
whatever she wants. She gets to say whatever she wants. It's not like I need her. Please echo what I said, Jenna, so that it sounds...
So hope, I have hope about things all the time. I don't have faith. The way that I define faith is believing in something without evidence. I define hope as wanting something to happen. I have hope that, I don't know how that...
It's if we look at hope in the way that we're talking about, all it is optimism.
Yeah.
And if your optimism is out of tune with the facts of reality, that's delusion. But if your optimism is in tune with the facts of reality, not only is there nothing wrong with that, but that's exactly what we should promote. And I don't even know how it could be a question of how one could have hope. All it is, are you having reasonable expectations based on the available evidence? All of our lives are uncertain. Nobody knows what's going to happen a second from now with regard to everything. And so we're constantly, you're either optimistic or pessimistic. And all I'm saying is that at the extremes of those, where they're not particularly warranted, that's a problem. But in the middle, both your optimism and your pessimism may be justified by the evidence.
Well, yeah, if we look at the evidence, we see people that are more comfortable with driving thousands of miles in a truck full of high fuel. You know what I mean? Like explosive.
You know why? How many of those tend to blow up and kill people? How often does that happen? Considering in the grand scheme of fuel being transported around the country. How often
and I agree that statistically that is rather rare. but those same people who are driving those trucks might be afraid of flying.
Okay. I'm not saying that everybody's optimism or pessimism is justified. I pointed out at both the extremes it's not. Why would you come up with an example that's in the extreme? Basically, you're saying, hey, there are people who have unwarranted concerns about the universe. Yes, there are.
No, but okay. So, is it possible that it's true that there are people who have warranted concerns about the nature of the universe that are pessimistic or without hope? Or
I literally just said that. I literally just said both your optimism and your pessimism may be warranted by the actual evidence. For example, I'm pessimistic that I will win the lottery even if I go and buy a ticket, because I know the odds are incredibly against me.
And yeah, absolutely sensible. But, so many people optimistically buy that ticket anyway.
Okay. A lot of people believe in God.
Yeah.
Let's stop pointing to the exceptions to the rules of rationality as if it disproves rationality.
Okay, but so how can we rationally have hope if we don't have faith in something that hasn't happened yet?
If all you mean is confidence, then your confidence is in the data that you have that tells you how likely something is or isn't to happen. It's not faith, it's just confidence. It is a reasonable, I have expectations, reasonable expectations based on the data. That's completely different from faith in a religious sense. But if you want to call it faith, then I have faith in data. I have confidence in data.
I agree with you, and I have confidence in data.
Then how can you still have this question?
Just look at the data. Doesn't it seem like things are going more wrong than right?
Wait.
And that's something to worry about. And how can we have hope that it's going to be okay?
That what's going to be okay?
What's going more wrong?
That have been going on for generations.
Sean, what's going more wrong than right?
Well, I mean, I really, the environment, that climate change denial.
Sure. Am I optimistic about our future? No, Sean.
To support that climate change denial has any evidence behind it. There's no data behind that.
You're sure about that?
And
you're sure that there's no... wait, did you say that there's no data behind climate change?
No, climate change denial.
Oh, okay.
None. Yeah.
Sean,
sorry.
Sean, the fact that you can point to examples of things that we shouldn't be optimistic about doesn't mean that there aren't other things that we should be optimistic about.
Well, but you keep using the word hope. And when I think about hope and climate change, I'm like, okay, I hope that the world's not going to, burn us all to pieces. But it might happen.
That we're not going to experience global floods and increasing tornadoes, but and hurricanes and other climate events that, from what I understand from the science, this is probably likely to happen. So how do we have hope?
You don't? Okay.
I mean, I think that's just a human thing. You just do.
I don't know that I have anything more to say. I've already pointing out something that we don't necessarily have warranted hope in doesn't mean that there's not other things we do have hope. If you mean, if your whole concern is, let's talk about climate change, how can we be hopeful and optimistic in the face of the data? Maybe you can't, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that you can't be hopeful in.
All right. So I see what you're saying. And I respect that, but doesn't it get hard?
Let's say
when you look,
it doesn't matter, Sean. Sean, yes, shit gets hard. Life can be hard. If I have stage 4 cancer and I'm lying in an hospital bed and we've tried everything and there's no more treatment, do I have hope that I'm going to continue living much longer? No, I have no reasonable hope. I can wish all day long, but I don't have a reasonable hope that I'm going to continue living. Does that mean that I'm completely devoid of hope? No, because I can have hope that I don't suffer as much pain in the benefits of medication. I can have hope that my family and friends who love me will come and spend time with me at the end of my life and remember me fondly afterwards. There are still things that I can find to have hope in, even in the face of almost certain death. It's if all you're concerned about is how can I have hope in this grand sense that everything's going to turn out all right, you can't and you shouldn't, because everything's not always going to turn out all right. There's a mix of good and bad.
Everything's on a spectrum.
And we finally sorted that out about the good and bad a while ago. There are things that you can be hopeful about, and there's things that you probably can't be. When you can find nothing to be hopeful about, that's a serious concern. That is a concern where I would recommend somebody in a position where they legitimately cannot be hopeful about anything should probably get a hold of the psychotherapist problem and find somebody to counsel them, because that position is not rational.
Part of the reason I'm asking this question is because I recently lost a friend to suicide, and I felt like I should have been there. Like I assured him that I would get in touch with him and we would hang out, and I feel like I missed an opportunity.
I'm sorry.
You know, like it's hard to know what you can do and what you can't. And I'm not a professional therapist, and I don't even know if I could have fixed that, or if anything I could have done would have changed anything. You know?
Yeah, that's hell.
It sounds like you might need to check out that secular therapy project if you can. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just saying it's helpful. I'm seeing one.
If I was in your position, having lost somebody to suicide and having the concerns that you have, I would reach out to the psychotherapist project as well. And while I'm not a therapist, I'll say this. When my grandma died a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to go visit her a week before she died, and I opted not to. The logistics just didn't work out. I could have made it work, but it just didn't. And so when they called me and said, hey, she's going to die in a couple of hours, the first thing that went through my head was, I'm a terrible fucking grandson. Why didn't I go see her? I mean, I knew, we knew she was probably within 30 days. And I realized that my reasons for not doing it weren't entirely selfish, but even if they were, that's not necessarily a problem. I had seen her at Christmas time and we'd had a good visit. And she knew that I loved her. She knew that I cared. She knew that I was there. And the fact that I wasn't there the week before isn't necessarily a problem. And there may be actually good things that come out of this. For example, my last memory of my grandmother is of us sitting around the table playing cards and laughing. And that's a very different memory to hang on to than watching her suffer and die at the end. The one thing that I've learned about this connection of friendships, I often have felt, I'm a terrible friend. I'm a terrible uncle. I only get to see my niece and nephew maybe at Christmas time. I'm a terrible uncle. I forget birthdays, and I live 14 hours away if I was driving, and I've got all this stuff going on in my life, and I'm not being the sort of uncle that I should be or that I wish I could be, et cetera. And yet my niece and nephew don't have that perception of me. And the friends that I had in high school, we had 900 plus people graduate my year. They split the school in half after that. I had a bunch of friends in high school. There's probably 2 that I've remotely kept in touch with over the years. And either one of them, I could call them up right now and we start over right from scratch. But you know what else? They're not keeping in touch with me either because they have lives. And my friend that I was talking about here in Austin who had stents put in and was in a coma for over a week, who I was almost certain was going to die, has recovered, gotten out of the hospital, had to go back into the hospital just the other day, and is now back out of the hospital as of, I think, this evening. And I haven't, because of the travel, I haven't been up to see him as much as I would like. But I'll tell you this, every time I start to feel bad about the fact that I didn't go up and visit Sean at every possible opportunity, I know that Sean is like a brother to me and knows that I would probably just didn't have the opportunity to go through there or had other reasons. And it doesn't diminish how much I cared about him at all. That's a
I
tough
actually
thing
saw
to
the
grip.
Facebook
That's a tough That's a tough thing to come to grips with, that you're not nearly as bad as you are, as you think you are. And the fact that you think that you might have done something bad actually shows how decent you are. Because if you were truly somebody who didn't care about your friend, you couldn't possibly be feeling remorse about it now. And this is a natural part of mourning somebody that you've lost, is the what could I have done different, or how could I have shown that I love them more? We all do that. As far as I can tell, and I'm not a therapist, that's completely normal. And one of the things you should do is forgive yourself.
But I'm doing the best I can, and it's not just for my friends. It's for everyone I know, everyone I encounter. And it's really sad often because there's so much that I wish I could explain and I wish I understood.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to listen and I'm trying to understand and I'm trying to,
Keep trying.
Yeah. You have to keep trying. And this may be the answer to your question about how do you have hope? Because if you stop trying, you're never going to have hope. Yeah, you have to keep trying, and we all do. And we're all going to get it wrong, and we're all going to screw up, and we're going to not care enough about somebody at exactly the right time. Mm-hmm. Maybe I had somebody contact me a week ago that was in an email that was distraught and needing help, and it came at a particularly bad time for me where I didn't have enough spoons to deal with my own issues, let alone somebody else's, and I didn't talk to them. And yet that email from somebody I don't even know has been playing on a loop in my head going, don't forget about that. Don't forget about that. The second you get time where you're in a headspace where you could potentially help somebody, talk to them. And that's for somebody I don't know. You're not a bad friend. And the fact that you're concerned about this and concerned about the disparity of all these big issues, and you're feeling the weight of a million things on you right now, and it feels like, oh my gosh, I'll never be hopeful. I'll never have hope again in the grand sense. And all I can say is, it may feel like that, but the data shows that it's not that. That good things are going to happen, that bad things are going to happen, and that you can, in fact, be hopeful about a great many things, especially when you are putting in the effort to push that hope. Doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, doesn't mean everything's going to work out in the end. But hope keeps away despair, and despair is going to end all of our hope. And so even on occasions where it's irrational to have hope, I understand why people do.
Despair is real, and I think you know it too. Yeah. And I think we all know it. And I think that to take some hope over the truth of despair takes a little bit of a leap of faith, and that's problematic for an atheist. But
it doesn't. It doesn't take a leap of faith, Sean. Here's the thing: if you're hopeful, if you force yourself to be hopeful and optimistic, even when it doesn't seem that that's the case, do you think you'll be better off having done that?
Yeah. And in fact, I know that I've gotten better off doing exactly that.
The data shows that there's a benefit to being hopeful, even in the face of overwhelming odds. That's the thing that you have confidence in, the data that shows that hope is better than despair, not faith that everything's going to work out, but confidence that everything is going to be better under the banner of hope than it is under the banner of despair.
Okay, so what if that's just polishing the brass on the Titanic? Like I can smile while the world burns. Isn't it, like I'm really pointing to like some existential, like, isn't it like even if we try to make the world better, can we?
That's what we're trying to do right now.
Do you think we can make the world better if we don't try?
No, we certainly can't if we don't try. But
that's
also,
all I need.
Like, there are people who tried to make the world better that failed in epic ways, and like I don't want to tread on Godwin's law.
But we learn from failures too. How many fuel trucks had to blow up before they became more safe? To where drivers, I remember an episode of Little House on the Prairie where Paul had to drive a wagon of nitroglycerin rattling around in the back of this wagon. Yeah, I don't find that to be a particularly optimistic exercise, but we've learned from those mistakes and we do a lot better now. And the only thing I need to give me hope is the awareness of what happens when we lose hope.
Well, if you look over just human history, there's so much evidence of and examples of what happens when you think that things are not going your way and you should stop trying, and then you keep trying and good things happen, wars and all kinds of just human evolution in general. There's so many things that we've learned just over history that have shown us that if you keep trying, things happen.
And I hate to do this because this is an incredibly important call. I'm going to put you on hold. And I'll be happy to sit around and talk to you a little while after the show's over. But there's a bunch of people on the other side. There's Chinese food coming, and we're already 30 minutes over on this. So I'm going to put you on hold for a minute, but I'll be right back. And